Hello and welcome to Not Just Ads, and welcome to Rishabh Lohia, co-founder and CEO of Bridge Media, a company that reinforces content-driven products through AI. Welcome, Rish. I'm an advisor of the company, but we are not talking about the company today. We are talking about AI agents. So let's start with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Ale. And I have heard your podcast. I love the way that you dive into certain subjects, especially around media.
Thank
And I'm
you.
looking forward to listening myself, perhaps at a later stage. Uh, as for AI agents, I will try explaining it in a non-technical fashion for everybody out there who um, perhaps has dabbled with it but wants to understand a little more from at least somebody who's not a coder or dabbling with product day in and day out. For me, an AI agent is basically a software program that understands tasks, it can make decisions, and it can take actions to achieve specific goals. Now, these goals could be multifold. It could be regarding customer service. It could be regarding creating more engagement. It could be regarding content recommendations, and so on. And they can perform either very simplistic tasks, saying one simple job, or it can perform composite tasks, meaning if you're an editor and you're looking for uh, discovering what I should write about, write the entire article with your oversight, of course, and publish it, and also publish it across different channels. An agent can perform all of these different tasks with a single button, and that's what an agent is.
Whether we want to do it or not. We are
Correct.
talking about the potential here, and we'll
Absolutely.
talk later about what a media, a content owner should or should not do.
Correct.
And this is a great generic definition, but what I feel in the day to day, it's hard for companies that haven't worked with AI to translate that into practice. So, company and brands with an audience, let's say B2C companies, direct to consumer companies, how can leverage AI agents and in what areas? You mentioned content production.
Yeah, I think at this stage, maybe what would make sense is that I give perhaps the most common use cases uh, that perhaps media is generally using, but they are actually being or agents are being used across different industries. Just to talk about,
Like,
um, for example, the marketplaces are using AI to help uh, visitors or customers like us, instead of going through the similar find a product, use a natural language agent, for example, to distill the information that you want and provide an exact match to what is it that you require. Something almost on the lines of emulating what you would go through a shopping experience when you go to a physical store, like you're talking to a person, for example. For example, in education, it could be where students or teachers or professors, specifically for teachers, let's go with that. They are inundated with tons of different kinds of knowledge pieces, whether that is on policy, whether that is on education, whether that is on measuring the performance of their pupils. An agent can actually, one, distill that information slightly better to be able to provide the same data points in a far more concise and an understandable fashion. Not everybody is, as I'm sure you would agree, is very convenient or apt with data registry. So how to understand, collate, question data points. And we understand everything in natural language. We understand it by talking to each other. So an agent can actually provide you that ability to ask questions just the way that you would do to a human being. For example, you're sending out something to a data analyst. Ask a similar question to your agent, and it might just provide you the right answer, and you can distill down a little more. Um, Talking about the use cases that perhaps media is using, um, I spoke about content production, right? So I'm sure a lot of your listeners must have already gone to Van Infra, the summit, and Reach has very descriptively explored what the story process looks like, and where on that story process, a seven-step process, as they call it, have introduced AI to not just produce content or produce ideas, but also to be able to write or redact those articles in order to suffice their branding guidelines and so on. So ultimately, the idea being that if you're able to reduce the repetitive, the mundane task that does not require um, high amounts of creativity. I would never say that it replaces the creativity. Again, figuring out what you want to write about is also creativity. But at the same time, it does not require as much as long as there are certain ideas out in the world which you can collect and then start writing about. So that's about content, scaling content production. The second use case for me is, which is very common, and I'm sure you must have heard of this, is personalizing content recommendation. Now, traditionally, content recommendation is always about which topic is currently being spoken about and suggest more articles based on topic. But that is, I think, an old school way of content recommendation where there's not taking care into account where has the user coming from. What is the sort of experience that the user or the visitor is actually looking for? What are the articles that they would like to read? And so there's no context building. And this is where AI can actually produce a lot of context, a lot of data in order to provide better articles as recommendations. And the third, of course, is increasing revenue, increasing subscriptions. Right now, those there are so many different ways that an agent can be used there, where you can suggest dynamic paywalls in order to improve not just views on your walls, but also have the right offer appear at the right time, so that you know exactly how a user is going to engage, or provide a slightly more um, I I would say humane experience when somebody's trying to subscribe to your content business, or keep them there or retain your subscribers better by engaging with them on a more regular basis, more periodic basis. So those are the two.
Ironic, ironic that you suggest that the artificial intelligence can help with providing more humane onboarding and subscription journeys. But yes, that's true compared to what the past and still the present uh, shows us across different websites and apps.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I heard recently enough was that 20 years ago we entered a digital transformation on everything that happens, but now we are at transformation of the digital. And I think maybe it was you who quoted it, but I felt that that was perhaps the best way of looking at how AI is. It is transforming the digital. It's actually bringing us slightly closer to understanding how we make decisions, how we talk to other people as well. And agents are basically a small little algorithms that are able to capture those elements. And then if you piece them together, it can do a bigger job for you.
And again, I digressed. Sorry, I took you away from the use cases. Please go ahead.
I think in terms of perhaps marketplaces, as I referred to marketplaces earlier, you will find a lot of specific brands using agents to improve the shopping experience. And I think we spoke about it. One of the things, one of the companies that I enjoyed, even though don't use it because I don't need it, is Sephora. And it's improving how you would buy beauty products, for example. Now there is basically a virtual beauty app that you can use, which is not just talking about how you want to get to the next best blush or a lipstick or whatever it is, but also be able to try that, right? So I'm sure we must have come across a lot of different platforms for eyeglasses where you can actually try on the eyeglasses before you buy them. Now, whether that renders properly across to your face and things like that, and that's basically AI being able to improve your shopping experience, right? Second is we all watch Netflix, right? And we know how they use AI to improve cross-selling, right? They cross-sell the inventory left, right, and center. They suggest and change pictures, change the covers of the same movies of the same family across, just to be able to test what attracts you better. What is it that you click on? improve on the way that you're consuming content, whether you would be willing to pay an extra for a game or lesser ads or whatever have you, right? And that's again something that's being used in media. Um, and the third that comes to mind is, of course, Amazon is doing a lot on that. Google is doing a lot on that, which is enhancing search. And I think all media is also doing that, interestingly enough, where instead of just typing in keywords, you're actually asking it a question. You're asking the search bar a question that is currently in your mind, and then let the engine produce something around that question instead of just suggesting you options. And all of that is basically powered with AI agents.
And a listener could think, okay, yes, but these are big companies with a lot of resources that definitely can reach that goal, and,
Yeah.
and they are at the forefront of experimentation. But also, you with your company and in general, it doesn't have to be that complicated, right?
It doesn't have to be that complicated at all because, again, you're absolutely right. These companies have won a lot of data. They have been um, consumer facing or have been in the digital world for so long that they know exactly what the user wants and have been able to ask those questions. The younger media companies or younger marketplaces, any digital platform, do not have that much of data or even the know how in terms of what is it that they can do to improve or upgrade their product. The basic question, however, a young company can ask is, number one, how is it that I would like to communicate with my customer instead of just showing something because it makes me money? And that's where I think the entire conversation is revolving around consumer experience, about customer experience, no matter what your business might be about, whether that is media, which is again a content product, or that's a marketplace, which is not the product being sold, but the way that the consumer is interacting with your platform. Because you mentioned what Bridge does, I think we have, and a lot of other companies within this space have been trying to bring the power of AI back to smaller and medium-sized companies, whereby you don't have to be a tech whiz in order to understand what goes behind an agent. You can use ChatGPT to create a small little chatbot, for example, and provide yourself and your user, for example, a customized experience. So yes, you're absolutely right that you do not require a lot of funds. However, you do require certain amount of time commitment, right? So for training any model, it's basically like a baby, right? And I take that example because fathering a young one thing that I've realized is there's so many things that we take for obvious that we know as to how things work. And AI algorithm is basically just that. It knows everything, but it does not know anything, right? It does not know how to do anything about all of that information. You can put up a huge table in a language model and ask it to generate something, and it will generate something. But is it of relevance? It doesn't know. And you have to provide that relevance. You need to be able to understand what variables that you want data against. And that's the bit that I think smaller companies don't end up having. They don't have the resources to train. They don't have the time to train such models, and that's where companies like us actually then become a participant and help them get on board with the new transformation of digital.
I'm fascinated by the agents that engage with the audience, the knowledge audience, maybe that discuss with the user about a topic that they've just read or are reading about, and they can expand their knowledge. But how I work for media companies, and I know that one of the first questions I would ask you is, how can I how can I make sure that my brand is respected, my relationship with the audience is respected? We read about AI hallucinations. How can you mitigate or eliminate that risk?
It's a very good question. I would say the number one, fear keeps us vigilant. So please make sure that you are you always take a reluctant step towards any large language model because hallucination is something that cannot be avoided. However, it can be limited. Now, in order to limit it, a lot of different companies work with different language models. Now, whether that's a large language model like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and whatnot, or you have a small language model which is basically built on the similar principle, but it's trained on only your data. It is not communicating outside of its current guardrails, right? So you've basically created like a reserve, for example, for it to be trained on, and then you scale that similar model across different verticals. In order to reduce hallucinations, a lot of training basically goes in preparing that agent to respond to a certain set of questions. So you, for example, come up with a scenario that this is what I would like to suffice. And let's take an example here saying, let's take an example of a customer service. That there are subscribers, for example, who would like to chat with customer service because they're not happy with their subscription. Now, instead of the subscriber directly calling or emailing the customer service team, they would like to know in terms of, why a certain thing happened? Why was I charged for the next bill? Or I'm not happy because I'm still receiving advertisements. Now, there are small little elements that the agent can respond in the most conversational fashion possible, and you can control different elements to it. If it goes off track, you can again readjust it, saying that if the question is asked without any context, then respond with this particular answer. And ultimately, it's reiteration of a layer that's basically what we call as an intent layer, meaning you've given it scenario one. How can you develop further on that scenario? What are the different intents that are coming up once user starts engaging with it? And that iterative model then basically becomes better. One of the other things that's important to keep in mind is the problem with a small language model or any model, for example, is that it can go into a spiral if it doesn't have new content to feed on. And that is where the editors actually come in, that it needs to be trained on new information. Always give it that. And that's what your users are also doing. By responding to it is actually getting that intent, and getting that information in order to produce slightly better, slightly more humane, for the lack of a better word, responses in order to suffice that particular need.
And let me complete this question with just a consideration.
Please.
I ask you about how media owners, and I hear them being worried about what will come out of the agent when engaging with their audience. And I'm thinking, yes, that's a fantastic. I mean, a fantastic approach. It's a great and fair question. I'm wondering, why are you not asking yourself when you recommend all that garbage content as well, and make that experience? But that's another story. It nothing to do with AI agents. You mentioned media editors, written content, but that works also with video, audio. Different verticals, could be sports, could be entertainment, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think sports is a very good example there for a reason, because they have perhaps the most engaged audience, right? Because sports is something that happens, like politics, for example. It does happen more regularly, and the adrenaline, the amount of excitement that exists in order to follow a fan, it's almost culty, isn't it? In a way, where people follow the fans. Now, AI is a fantastic tool to help personalize engagement with your fans. Fantastic way of using AI as a revenue stream. And I'm not saying to replace anything that you're doing, it's adding another revenue stream. For example, you are covering a basketball match. Now, in that
Oh, accidentally my favorite sport.
oh, is it? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't know that. I'm totally up for a game with you. But if you're following a basketball match, you've just covered the highlights of it. Now, you mentioned a few things on the highlights. You mentioned the teams, you mentioned the stats, you mentioned their past history. There might be other elements which are important. For example, will the player stick with this team, and so on. Now, all of this information is very critical for a person who is following that team or that player. AI can actually produce all of that content at a click. Now, all of that information already exists in your domain, which right now the user was figuring out by himself. But what if there is a possibility that they can ask a question while they're reading an article, saying that, "Can you tell me a little more in terms of what have they done in the past?" And the AI goes through your archives, goes through what is in your domain, and produces something that is very relevant to that particular need. What is done in the end is, one, it's kept the user engaged for longer. Two, you're able to generate more value of the content that you've already been producing for so much time and give it a slightly different packaging. And three, now they understand the entire universe. For example, the basic idea of AI is also kind of allowing you to let the user know what all is available for you to see. And this is why I want to charge you, because there's so much and I've not been able to give you that. And that's where it becomes, I think AI becomes very important, specifically for a sports use case.
And so, if I am a company, small media company, medium media company, sport organization, entertainment organization, artist, what, where should I start from?
Ooh, I think that's a brilliant question. I think there are three different areas that I would say that a small company should start preparing themselves with when they think about AI. One is you look inside, right? When I say look inside, you look inside your own organizations, you speak to your team members, you see what your tech stack is built of, and you see what are the different tools that you're currently using. Why I say that is it is very important to have your team on the same page when you're planning to adopt something which is as disruptive as AI right now. Everybody needs to be on the same boat. Same boat, when I say that, is not just, yes, we're going to adopt a new technology, but also that the game plan is not to replace or replace the current skill set. It's to enhance the current skill set and reduce the amount of data gaps that might exist, which is actually hindering our progress as a business. Two is looking at what changes that might have to be brought about when you're looking at software. Is it Are the systems able to communicate with each other? Do you require another system so that the data that you currently have can actually communicate with AI generally? Do you have proper tagging of your content, for example, so that AI can actually read through that and do its bit of suggestions, walls, and so on? Right? So those are the bits, those are organizational, workforce, sentiment related, tech related stuff that I think companies should first go through. And again, there are a lot of different programs which are also helping around that, which is looking at the strategic standpoints in that there are bits which you need to improve as an organization, as a team. If you need to have a bridge role, for example, because that will help in understanding where are the gaps across different departments and so on. Right?
By the way, this is such a common theme in every single episode of the podcast. Strategy first, strategy first, strategy first,
I
in
mean,
capital letters.
I completely agree, and I think that should be the name of your next book. But it's like strategy is really important, of course, because you need to have a roadmap. You need to have some sort of an idea in terms of where you're going with this, right? I'm sure we've all heard of the fact that AI is not a silver bullet. Yes, it is not. It is not the knight in shining armor. That's not gonna help you. The idea is to enhance your current objectives and leverage AI in order to do so. Can it actually do so for you? Is the bit that you need to check first. So, till you don't have that roadmap, you don't know where to look. And that's why I say when you look inside, you first need to see whether it actually makes sense for you as a technology, right? The second part is I say look around, right? When I say look around, what are the other companies in your cohort actually doing? Are they changing? Are they talking to different people? Are there other software vendors that they need to speak with? What are the areas we're dabbling with when you're talking about the overall vision and mission of the company? You're basically doing a little bit of an analysis around you, saying that, okay, does this actually make sense for me? Once you've done the strategic part, right? Because a lot of companies don't really need to do that. They perhaps just need a slightly better website or a slightly better, subscription paywall. That's about it. It's just a little bit of a CSS. because they already have engagement and things like that. You don't require AI for that reason, right? Um, Check for vendors, for example. What are the other vendors that are available? What do these vendors actually have capability of? What does their tech look like? Can it communicate with us? Can it communicate with the technologies that we have originally? What's the cost like? And those are the bits that you start doing around just to be able to do a little bit of a competition analysis, an analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? The basic
And
stuff.
sorry if I jump in, and here I guess a very important part is
Please.
also how do they protect the privacy of your data, of your audience. This is crucial.
Oh, it's very crucial, and I'm glad that you brought it up. So, as an AI company, something that we instill, and while we were building this, is we do not hold any rights to your data. Anything that we produce, and that's the same trend that I see with a lot of different companies as well, is they are just a layer of AI that actually helps you optimize certain goals. They don't actually keep the data on them. The idea is to communicate with your existing data management platform or email management platform or whatever that is. If you are, of course, connected with OpenAI and things like that, then you have your own systems there, right? So you are entering a contract with them that allows or disallows you to train their models. That's completely up to you. But in terms of data, we ensure that the product is not held by us. We are not using the your content to train somebody else's model. It is for your systems, for your audience, and that's it. So at a standpoint, if you want to take that and develop further on it, that's completely up to you, right? So that's a very important question. The last part perhaps that the companies can do in order to improve or see whether they are okay with this new technology is actually look onwards. When I say looking onwards, is figuring out the KPIs that are important to them in order to push that bottom line. um, I think an example is, of course, all of us relate to this. If an ad-based business, any business, for example, the idea is to increase engagement, the idea is to improve click-through. Now, it's not just a one-shot solves all sort of a scenario. There are different elements to how people are engaging, readers are engaging with your website, whether that's the content itself, whether that's the UX, whether that's the ad inventory, whether that is how they're actually responding to your ads, where the ads are placed, and so on. And there are so many different elements there. Once you've figured out those KPIs, perhaps the next thing is to build a hypothesis around it. And that's how any experimentation would work. And I would really push for um, organizations, professionals to look at every scenario almost it is like a hypothesis, because it's basically our opinion and then us doubling down on that opinion with data. If you're not able to figure out any data point, that means that hypothesis cannot be proved. And this is something that as a habit we will need to inculcate. We've heard about a product mindset and whatnot. That principle starts with building a hypothesis, no matter how simple the hypothesis is, but there's a structure to that hypothesis.
100%. That should be like core foundation for content-based, audience-focused businesses, because that's only through testing, hypothesis, and learning
Absolutely.
that actually also resources can be optimized. It's not just about theory and applying theory. It's also about saving money, prioritizing one approach versus the other, etc.
Totally, totally. And I think a lot of these learnings are somehow limited to only startups, I feel, because of the of the agile framework and things like that. And I really respect that, but I think each and every media company should take AI as a startup in their organizations, where you start building a hypothesis, see what resources you have, what KPIs you want to improve, and start experimenting. Have a limitation to that experiment, put a time frame to it, and discover what learnings that you've actually got and then reiterate, right? um, and I think last but not the least is, once you've done your experimentation, once you're happy with the learnings, make sure that you distill the learnings and then scale gradually. Don't apply this across all the different verticals that you might have, teams that you may have. it was just create so much noise that is very difficult to manage. And as you would know, any organization, media organization that may be, or a digital platform that may be, they have so many things to do. And AI will definitely just become another task that never gets done. So if you have something which is very small, which you can actually leave it running and come back to it periodically, it will have a far better return. Otherwise, it'll just get lost in all of this noise that we are right now hearing, where everything is basically AI, and you get a little bit of a immunity build against AI, where you stop recognizing that, and that's not the idea. The idea is to kind of have it, help your business. So that's at least the advice that I would say for small businesses.
Thank you, Rish. You're being incredibly effective in dispelling myths, in bringing down to earth something that usually is very theoretical, and a lot of companies don't understand, and they are lost in noise and bombarded with offers. And I would suggest then, after this episode, maybe in the future, you could come back and show us concrete examples and real life examples.
Absolutely, I would love to. I would love to. One of the things that we are at a stage right now, Ale, which I really enjoy, and I enjoy, again, not technical, but I still. Why I say this is because my background, for example, was I love cooking. I was a chef of the last company that I built, and it's very easy to build a hypothesis.
You were the chef of the company, or it was a cooking company?
It was a dark kitchen, so I was the head chef of the dark kitchen. So I would actually help small uh, house chefs to scale their recipes for 500 to 1,000 people,
Amazing.
right? And the idea is scaling, right? So small little learning. They produced a dish for 4 people. Now it has to be scaled for 1,000 people. The idea is to take that as an experiment, let it
Fantastic.
run, and then see whether it can be actually scaled or not, and what are the things that need to be improved. And there's a very quick learning process, and AI in its current stage has allowed us to do exactly that: accelerate the process of experimentation so that you can reach that scale that you're looking for. A slightly, I won't say you're hurrying up the process, but you're actually definitely putting a far more solid step forward.
Thank you, Rish. I will also be grateful when you will teach me on how to boil an egg. But for now, see you soon, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Alec. Pleasure talking to you, and look forward to being on the podcast again. Thank you.